Hello adventurers, and hello to my friends, both new and old. Welcome back to my painting channel, and in this video we are going to be painting the amazing and the legendary Treebeard model from the Games Workshop Middle-earth strategy battle game. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to use an oak brown primer. So I'm going to use this oak brown primer from the army painter, and first things first, we're going to spray all of the model using this colour so that this gives us the base tone and the base colour that we want. So once you've sprayed all of your model, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. So this now is our Treebeard all primed and ready to paint. But what we're going to do with this, we're going to paint this model in a completely different way. So instead of painting multiple, or we're going to paint multiple layers, but we're going to use the base tone and the primer base color as our base, and then we're going to build up from there. So instead of needing to cover it with multiple layers, we're going to use the primer layer as our base coat. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to use a Vallejo dark black wash. So this is the dip-in formula wash, and that's all I'm going to do is just cover the entire model using this black tone. Now this is going to really darken the model down, but more importantly what this is going to do is this is going to allow a lot of the darker areas in all of those recesses and all of those areas where the shadows and the shade would be. This is going to dry down really dark in those areas. So especially in things between like the knee joints, the elbow joints and things like that. Because as we build Treebeard back up, we're going to leave those knee joints, those elbow joints and things in the same colour. So we're going to leave those in a really nice dark brown tone. So that's all I'm doing is just covering the whole miniature with this. So like I said, we're going to use that incredible sort of primer to work as our base. Then using that black, we're really going to darken it down. Now from there, because I like to have a challenge, we're going to use Beastie Brown as our first sort of build-up tone. But because I like a challenge, instead of dry brushing the model, which you can do and that's absolutely fine, what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to try to hand paint all of those raised areas using the very tip of the brush. This is a reason why this video has taken me quite a while to get out into onto the channel, is because this model has taken me quite a while to paint, mostly because I'm trying to hand paint all of those details and it does take a while. But there is a but. Although it does take a while, when this is finished, it's going to look really great. And the reason for that is you can really see the time and effort that has been spent on it. This is something that we really want to be proud of, and we really want to show off our ability, and we really want to show off the real details and the effort and everything that we put into this model. So what I'm doing, as you can see, just using a nice thin down paint, I'm just using the very tip of the brush as always, and we're just going to slowly pick out all of those raised areas. Now the cool thing is you can see where that wash and that shade has already darkened everything down and really made all of those darker bits in between much darker, just like so. You can really see it on this part of the video here, and that's all I'm going to do is just show you again using that Beastie Brown how I'm just going in and picking out all of the raised areas of the bark, leaving that darker tone in all of those cracks and crevices and creases, and this is giving us an amazing two-tone effect very quickly. Now like I said, you could dry brush this if you want to. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It is a tree after all, so dry brushing would work really well on something like a tree, because this will give you a real natural sort of gritty hard edge as well. But if you wanted to follow along and paint using the brush just the same as I am, you're more than welcome to follow the steps that I'm using. So once we've done with that and we're happy with how the Beastie Brown has gone, we're then going to use earth. So this is just a straightforward earth color, and again this is a Vallejo game color, and what we're going to do with this is going to be next step up. So this is going to be the next highlight, and again doing the same thing as what we've done with the previous stage. That's all I'm going to do is just slowly using the very tip of the brush, just going to pick out some of those raised areas and get some of the highlights and pick out some of those details. Again, this is going to take a little bit of time, or rather, this is going to take a lot of time. But again, it's going to be worth it, because once we get to the very end of this, it's going to look fantastic. And we're going to have those multiple tones and multiple colors showing through on the model, which is really going to bring the depth of the model to life. It's really going to bring a lot more character and give it a lot more sort of depth and detail and things like that. It's really going to be worth the time and effort to do this. And again, as you can see, just showing you on all of the bark, just on the inside, just using the very, very tip of the brush just to pick out all of those highlights and the areas that I want to be highlighted, just like so, using the brush strokes to create sort of textures and tones and all these different things. And you could be as freehand and as detailed or as, you know, dry brushing as you like. You can go as crazy as you like. You could spend as much time on this as you like, or as little time on this as you like. It is completely up to you. Like I say, it's always good to challenge yourself and push those boundaries, because it'll give you the ability to really step up the painting. And this is why sometimes having a challenge like trying to hand paint all of these is a little bit more fun than just dry brushing it all. And again, there's nothing wrong with dry brushing. It is all just down to personal choice. Now, once that's done, I'm going to use a blackened brown, and this one is from scale 75. This is just a lighter brown color, so this has got a little bit of a lighter sort of tone to it. And I'm just going to pick out some of the more sort of highlighted areas, or areas that I want to have a slight difference in the color. So around the face, up and around the top of the head, and some of the branches around the top of the head as well. And again, just using the tip of the brush to bring out all of those colors and to bring out all of that depth and really give us a little bit of a mixed tone sort of effect to the model as well, just like so. There we go. You can really see that color sort of showing through just as we're building up where we want the light areas and the light patches to really be catching on those parts of the bark. So just across the raised edges and the top edges, just like so. It's all in all a really, really great model to paint. It's a really fun model to paint. And as I say, you could just go crazy and dry brush it. You could go as wild as you like, or you could be as controlled as you like. It is completely up to you. Now, once that's done, I'm going to use leather brown from the army painter, and for this one now, we're going to paint all of the beards. We're going to paint Treebeard's beard. For this, I am actually going to dry brush, because a lot of these areas and a lot of these parts, especially around the beard area, as you can see, these are very small twigs. These would be very, very difficult to brush by hand. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to use the dry brushing technique on this, just to pick out and build up a little bit more sort of lightness and bring a little bit more color and tone to it. But the reason why I'm using leather brown for this one is because it's a different brown to the rest of the bark. So this will give us that added tone, that added color definition, and that little bit of a mixture of different colors. Sometimes painting something as big as this, if you paint it all the same color, you will lose a lot of that character. So when you've got a lot of different browns and a lot of different sort of earth tones, it is good to mix those colors together and use different tones, because this brings it to life all the more. Now, once that's dry, I'm going to use orange brown, and with the orange brown, that's all I'm going to do is just use that dry brushing once more, and this time we're going to use it on the very raised areas, so the topmost raised edges. So you're going to use this just a little bit towards the top of the beard, and especially around things like the mustache, because this is going to build a little bit more of an orangey color, and again, it's going to give us that little different tone and build a little bit more character through it. So once that's dry, then I'm going to use Military Shader, and Military Shader is a very, very dark green wash. So this is really, really good for adding a little bit of a green tone into certain areas of the model. Now what I'm going to do here is we're just going to paint this into the beard. So this is going to tone down a little bit of the darker areas inside, but it's going to give us a little bit of a green tone to the beard as well, because we kind of want a little bit of a green sort of color to it. We want a little bit more life and a little bit more sort of greenery, just showing through in subtle hints as well. And I'm also going to paint these little spore areas just around the feet using the same thing, just adding this little bit of a green tone into these points, just so that it brings that subtle green color just into certain areas. Once that's done, I'm then going to use a green wash from Vallejo. You could use any sort of wash. The green wash, this particular one, is really good because the way that this dries down, it kind of creates a almost sort of mossy, greeny sort of colour, and that is absolutely perfect for bringing this model to life. Now what you can see here is I'm just dabbing this on, and I'm going to focus this mostly towards the top part of the beard as well, and just down a little bit of the middle here. And again, this is just going to create that little bit of light sort of green life and add a little bit of colour and a little bit of definition and tone to the model as well. So once we're done with all that, then I'm going to use a Fugan Orange. This is a Citadel shade. So this is one of the older shades that Citadel used to use. I'm not sure if they still use this one. I've had this one for quite a while. But that's all I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to pin wash this one. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using the very, very tip of that detail brush. And I'm just picking out certain parts of the bark that I want a little bit of orange colours and a little bit of a sort of a warmer tone and texture to as well. Now if you don't have this Fugan orange, you could use something like a light tone from the Army Painter. That would do equally as well, because again it's just a nice orange sort of colour and a nice orange texture. And as you can see, using the very tip of the brush, I'm just building a little bit of a orangey sort of tone into areas of the bark. Now we're going to wait for that to dry because we've used quite a few different washes, and then once all of that is dry, we're then going to use this medium olive colour just to start picking out all of the little leaves that are coming just down on the beard area, just like so. So there's quite a few different greenery parts and green leaves and areas that are just sticking out of his beard. As you can see, you've got the little snail and things as well. And that's all I'm doing is just using the very, very edge, the very tip of the brush, once again, just to pick out all of those details and just pick out all of those green parts, just like this. Now you could paint these green bits before you apply the wash as well if you wanted to, and then when you apply the wash, that'll tie those green areas into the model as well. It is all just down to personal choice whether you want to add them in beforehand or afterwards. That is completely up to you. But on this and for this tutorial, I've added them in just a little bit later. Now once I've done the ones in the beard using the same colour, this medium olive, I'm then going to paint all of the leaves just sticking out off the twigs, just out of his back. This is one of the areas that also took me a little bit of a while, because what I found was no matter how many times I checked over the model and painted these green leaves, there was always one or two that I had missed, because there are a lot of leaves just on the branches on the back of his body. So just bit by bit, just building that up. Oh, and as you can see, I'm just leaving that little sort of dark brown groove just in the centre to add that little bit of depth as well. Then we're going to use a Goblin Green, which is a nice light tone. So this is a really, really nice light green. And then I'm just going to use that to once again just add a little bit more colour, a little bit more vibrancy and a bit more depth to the greenery. Just bringing out a little bit more life and green tones just into the beard area, just like so. There we go. So just trying to be as careful as possible, again using the very tip of the brush and using the brush strokes to create a little bit of texture and a little bit of tone and a little bit of depth as well, like we always do on the channel. There we go, and as you can see, just using the brush strokes there just to create a little bit of leafy textures and things like that, and that's adding a little bit more depth again onto the model in a nice, quick and easy fashion as well. It seems like a very complicated sort of style or a very complicated effect, but it's actually done very, very quickly and easily, and it does, although it seems like a very, very small detail, it does add to the overall character and the overall look and feel of the model when it's complete as well. So there we go, just trying to make sure that I paint all of those leaves and not leaving any of them unpainted. There are quite a few just around on the left hand side, just over here on his right hand side rather, so it's the left hand side of the back and the right hand side of the front. And there's quite a few leaves all hidden together and bunched together under here, so just be careful as to not miss out on any of those. So once we've done with that, we're going to use a light earth tone. This is a really, really great sort of earthy, creamy kind of colour. And that's all I'm going to do with this is just paint all of the little mushrooms in this sort of colour. Now there's all manner of different colours you can paint mushrooms. Mushrooms are a fantastic thing on a model to paint because there's so many different types of mushrooms in the world. What I'm trying to do with this is I'm keeping this into this earth, this light earth, this earthy tone colour, just so that it doesn't take over the model too much. So normally you'd think a mushroom would be something like red, which is great, but you don't want to use bright red colours on a model that has got the greens and the browns, because it might show off too much, especially around the mushrooms on his face. So what I'm trying to do is just use an earthy colour that matches with a lot of the earthy tones that we've already used, and that way it's going to blend in and it's going to tie the colours together but not look too garish or too outlandish then. But I mean, you could use sort of orange colours, orange tones, all things like that. That's completely up to you. Then once that is done, we're going to move on and paint the rock. And with the rock, I'm going to start with an ash grey. This is also from AK Interactive, which is the same company as the previous colour. And I'm just going to base coat all of the rock using this nice dark ash grey. So this is a really dark grey, but it's not dark enough to pass off as black. This is sort of a dark grey colour that then we'll be able to build and dry brush sort of lighter tones back up. So that's all I'm doing, is just carefully trying to base coat this without getting this onto the tree, which we've spent so many hours painting by now. We just don't want to make any mistakes and get the grey on those bits of brown that we've worked so hard on. Doesn't matter too much if you do make mistakes, because you can't fix them, but obviously you want to be as careful as possible so you don't have to go back. Once that's done, I'm going to use a blue shade. So for this, we're going to use a Drakenhof Nightshade. Again, so this is a blue tone. You could use a blue tone from the army painter, and that would work equally as well. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cover all of this rock, because we've got those orange tones, those earthy tones, and those sort of bright, nice sort of warm tones into the tree. I'm going to use the blue tone, so we're going to use this blue shade and tone this down so that this looks a lot colder, and this is going to give us a real good temperature change between the life of the tree and the temperature of the tree down to the colder, cool sort of lifeless sort of side of the stone then as well, which is really going to give us a nice little bit of a parity in the middle, in the model. Then we're going to use a medium flesh tone. With the medium flesh tone, then I'm just going to dry brush very gently just over those spore points just across the bottom. Now those spore points, you could paint those in all manner of different colours. You could dry brush them just the normal colour of the rest of the tree. You could use greens if you wanted them to be a little bit more like moss, but I'm using this medium flesh tone again just to build up a little bit of a lighter tone and to give that little bit of warmth, because this is more of sort of like a creamy yellow tone. So this is just going to add a little bit of warmth to those areas as well, and again add into that contrast between the blue and the cold stone and that warm tree. Then I'm going to use a graphite. Again, this is from AK Interactive, and then we're going to dry brush this. Again, being very careful, sticking mostly to the very edges, and we're just going to dry brush this stone. Now, the cool thing with dry brushing things like stones is stones are supposed to be rough and broken and sort of quite gritty and things like that. So when you use a dry brushing technique, all that rough sort of brush strokes and things like that, they tie in and add really nicely to the stone effect as a whole. So that's why we're just going to gently dry brush this. Now dry brushing is quite messy, so as you can see I'm using a very small dry brush for this, and the reason for that is so that I've got a lot more control over where I'm dry brushing. Now, once that's done, that's pretty much mostly done. So what we're going to do is we're going to add some extra sort of character and some extra sort of tone, and we're going to go to one of my channel favorites. I'm going to use the AK Interactive moss texture, and with the moss texture, I'm just going to add a little bit of Mod Podge into certain areas of the model. So I'm just going to use that sort of detailed basing brush. So it doesn't matter if I'm using glue and things with this, because my basing brush is a bit of a wrecked old brush anyway. And that's all I'm doing, is I'm just going to apply some of this Mod Podge, and Mod Podge is fantastic because it dries down to a matte effect, so you don't get like shiny bits of glue on your model. And I'm just going to place that on the rock, and then I'm just going to sprinkle bits of this moss texture, and again this is going to add to all of that earthy sort of bringing the tree and bringing the model to life. It's really going to add an extra level of depth to the model, because not only have we painted all of those colours and we have this really great model where we've got dark areas, light areas, we've got the cold sort of stone and then the warmer sort of tones of the browns, we're now adding in this moss texture and just creating that little bit of life and creating a bit more sort of like I say, that life texture to the model. We're bringing that model into a bit more of an effect of having this moss growing through the tree and growing through the vines and the legs and bits like that. So you can place that on as much or as little as you want on the model. As you can see, I've placed it between all of those little cracks on his legs, and it's really bringing him to life. And then just there you can see that I've added one or two small little bits to the base, and those small bits are just 3D printed parts. So that's all I've got, is one or two tree trunks and things that I've 3D printed and stuck onto the base. And then If you wanted to see how I've based the model, you're more than welcome to drop into any of my terrain tutorials on the channel, and you'll see all of the different techniques that I've used just to bring that base together. So just the normal sort of grass tufts, the grass flock, and of course the clump foliage as well. But all in all, when we're all done, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. You'll have to let me know in the comment section what you think of this model. I've spent a great deal of time painting bark for this one, and it has taken me absolutely ages. So sorry for the delay in the video, but I really hope that you've enjoyed it, and I hope that this is a video that will inspire you to move and to paint in your own way as well, and to paint your own Treebeard. So as always, drop me a like, drop me a comment, and I'll get back to you, because I absolutely love speaking to you guys. Take care of yourselves, my friends. Thank you all so much for your patience. Thank you all for everything you do on this channel, and most importantly, for your time. Take care. I will see you all on the next one.